We are. We're good.
Fellow Liberians, the citizen movement for change welcomes the opportunity to the sooner delivered by President Joseph Boakai. In the spirit of national renewal and progress, we offer this statement as a constructive critique designed to foster honest dialogue about the urgent reality confronting our nation. We must be forthright about the present issues, critical shortcomings, and missed opportunities that demand collective action and bold leadership. Before we respond to the legislative agenda and economic and social conditions, I would like to set the stage for an honest discussion, a discussion that will be grounded in the urgent challenges facing Liberia, not platitude and celebration of paving a few miles of primary roads, grading some feeder roads, and proposing a development agenda that has not begun to address the urgent challenges in our country, including abject poverty, lack of quality and adequate education, healthcare, and drug rehabilitation system, and limited experience. Today, January 26, 2026, Liberia is in its 179th years of independence, Africa's first republic. Today, we heard our president, in His Excellency Joseph Boakai, list a litany of accomplishments of the Unity Party-led administration. We heard about GDP growth figures, revenues in the hundreds of millions, related expenditures. An essential question that we must ask, with all these supposed grand accomplishment, why is Liberia still among the 10 poorest countries on the planet? Why our Human Development Index is a paltry of 0.048, ranking Liberia 177 out of 194 countries? Why after 23 years, the international community boasting our $17 billion in foreign direct investment, billions of dollars in export proceeds for foreign multinational corporations, the average Liberian continue to live on less than $2 a day. We have seen successive presidents mount the podium with pages of accomplishment, hours of explanation on development, yet only 3 out of 10 Liberians have access to pipe-borne water. Many Liberians still drink from the polluted streams and rivers their ancestors drank from hundreds of years ago. As a result of abject poverty in our country, we die young. The current life expectancy, depending upon which data we use, is below 65 years. Poverty is a way of life. Minor illnesses kill thousands yearly. We have made progress. Can we honestly say we have utilized our God-given resources, our geographic location, and our human capital to make any significant improvement in the lives of our citizens? The answer is a resounding no. President Boakai's 2026 SONA outlines modest GDP growth, improved both domestic and foreign investment. In 2025, the administration pledged to overhaul fiscal management, reduce inflation, and expand the tax base. There has been no movement in curtailing public spending and stabilizing macroeconomic indicators, and the pace of job creation and poverty reduction has lagged expectation. President Boakai failed to update the country on the progress. What new measure has he put in place? How has that translated to saving on wastage and improvement in the life of our citizens? The president indicated $4 billion in committed investment, mentioning the HPS and accelerometer concession agreement. The figure of $4 billion is the figment of the imagination of the president's speechwriter. Preliminary exam by experts indicate that no more than $900 million over several years is the highest of the investment. The president has also stated that the total and Oronto production sharing agreement will amount to $800 million in investment. This is another over-exaggeration of investment. Oronto exploration wells. They do not have technical or financial capacity. There is no history of the company engaging in exploration in deep waters. We can simply say, based upon the company's action in 2007, flipping local blocks 11, 12, and 14, the granting of oil block to Atlas Oronto is an effort to enrich a very few hidden hands, both foreign and Liberians. President Boakai's 2026 SONA underscored a notable rise in Liberian domestic revenue, positioning it as a key achievement and a potential turning point for the country's fiscal independence. As Liberia advances its tax reform agenda, the transition from the general GST to the VAT has emerged as a central factor influencing these revenue outcomes. The increase in domestic revenue can be attributed to the transformation from the GST to VAT. However, the VAT by design does not broaden the tax base. It simply increases the tax burden on ordinary citizens. Thus, the most touted revenue surge is simply a function of this tax policy shift rather than organic economic expansion or improved compliance in the existing sector. Evidence from the fiscal data show that the bulk of the new collection is concentrated in sectors newly subject to VAT, or where economic growth or significant improvement in enforcement. This pattern indicates that the rise in domestic revenue is not organic, but rather policy-induced, with limited reflection of underlying economic dynamism. The business environment remains hampered by bureaucratic hurdle, inconsistent policy implementation. The government effort to promote agricultural modernization and small enterprise support promised in 2025 have not shown any transition into widespread economic transformation. The persistence of unemployment and underemployment highlights the need for more targeted intervention and inclusive growth strategy. Critical shortcoming remains. Promises of inclusive government and effective service delivery, tenets of local government have materialized for many years. Inefficiency, lack of citizen involvement, and slow implementation of key reforms have left urgent needs unmet. The CMC underscores the necessity of honest self-reflection and the courage to acknowledge and address these failures. Liberia cannot afford to squander more opportunities for genuine change. As the President's SONA paints a picture of robust economic progress and stability, citing improvement in GDP growth, inflation, reserves, revenue, and infrastructure. However, a critical analysis reveals that the progress heralded is, in many respects, minimal and falls short of delivering transformative or spectacular change for the majority of Liberia. The recent NEMO report clearly indicated that the government has fallen short of its development agenda, achieving a measly 0.08%. While the economy reportedly grew by 5.1% in 2005, this figure, though above forecast, must be viewed in context. Liberia's economy remains small and heavily reliant on agriculture, sectors that are vulnerable to commodity price shock and external influences. The cited growth, largely driven by mining expansion and export gain, does not necessarily translate into broad-based improvement in living standard or job creation for most citizens. Furthermore, the persistence of high-level poverty rate and the significant challenges remain unresolved, with growth failing to diversify beyond the traditional sectors. Inflation decline to 4% is highlighted as a major achievement. Yet, this reduction follows a period of high inflation of 8% in 2004, meaning the benefit is relative and recent. The considerations are limited to Monrovia. However, it does not consider the costs associated with getting goods to rural Liberia, where 75% of the population resides. This is a deliberate attempt to confuse the Liberian people to get unjustified political capital. Secondly, the inflation figure under normal circumstances has not seen any credible adjustment in the CPI basket since 2026, when the last household income and expenditure survey was conducted. Many Liberians have already endured the brunt of price increases, and the current price level for basic goods like rice and fuel offering only modest relief. The reported strengthening of reserve and currency appreciation, while positive, are largely the result of favorable external conditions rather than durable reforms that will insulate the economy from future shocks. A reversal in the upward swing of commodity prices will undermine the upward swings in the Liberian political economy for generations, and will continue on this trend unless Liberia becomes producers of finished goods instead of simple suppliers of raw material to foreign exporters. On the fiscal point, the increase in domestic revenue and the approval are presented as milestones. Yet, these gains, in part, a rebound from previous underperformance and heavily dependent on improved tax compliance and digitization, which, while commendable, do not represent a fundamental transformation of Liberia's economic base. The government's continued reliance on external loan and grants, over $334 million in new agreements and $381 million in donor commitment, demonstrates that fiscal reliance remains fragile. The abrupt cut in donor funding in 2025, which led to many permanent job losses and hardship, further exposes the vulnerability of the economy to external shocks and underscores the minimal progress in building self-sufficiency. Infrastructure improvement, such as the paving of roads, as evidence of progress. However, the scale of these projects remains limited to the country's need, and many initiatives are either incomplete, delayed, or heavily reliant on external financing. For example, the most touted road projects and urban improvement have faced significant delays, and the energy sector, despite new connections, continue to grapple with outages and inefficiencies. 1,000 jobs appears exaggerated. Secondly, and even more distressingly, these are temporary jobs. Promised future youth employment initiatives are largely tied to temporary or project-based work rather than sustainable private sector-driven employment that will indicate deeper economic transformation, which leads us to another where there was no update on progress in private sector development and expansion. This lapse is a clear indicator that this is not a priority agenda for this president. Finally, while the government points to achievement in education, health, and digital transformation, these are incremental improvements addressing long-standing deficits rather than breakthroughs. The removal of ghost names, increased immunization rates, and expanded digital finance do not fundamentally alter the trajectory of Liberia development. Many challenges, such as under-resourced schools, healthcare facilities, and persistent unemployment, remain prevalent. Additionally, the regulation of schools and healthcare systems remain poor, which result in low level and a citizenry ill-prepared for workforce. This is directly related to issues in the labor market that give birth to allegations that Liberians are not qualified for higher level employment opportunities. If this administration does not see a clear line, then it is a major problem. Additionally, the president reported that the health sector saw significant improvement. Maternal death dropped nationwide, immunization coverage for children under 1 reached 88%, and medicine stockouts decreased from 95% to 5%. According to experts, the national surveillance data, an average of 6 to 7 women die weekly from pregnancy-related causes. By EPR week 31 in 2005, 152 maternal deaths and 640 neonatal deaths were recorded. Clearly, Mr. President, this is not a healthcare circumstance to be described as victorious, but worrisome. In summary, despite the positive rhetoric and selected data points, the economic and social progress reported in the SONA is abysmal. The underlying structural issue, dependence on commodities, vulnerability to external shock, slow diversification, and remain largely unaddressed. Thus, the narrative of spectacular progress is overstated. What has been achieved are necessary, but not transformative steps in Liberia's long journey towards sustainable development. In closing, the citizen movement for change urges this administration to embrace a more inclusive, transparent, and effective approach to governance. We call on the administration, opposition, and civil society, prioritize urgent reforms, and foster a culture of accountability. Liberia's future depends on our collective resolve to confront uncomfortable truth and pursue solutions that serve all citizens. The time for action is now. God bless Liberia.